Things are really starting to go, and by these squash and pumpkins mixed, and it's kind of a surprise what they turn out to be. Down there looks like an acorn squash. Looks very much like an acorn squash. And here is really looks like a straight up pumpkin. It looks like a full-blooded pumpkin somehow. And here's a tomato that's growing in with, when I transplanted them, there was tomatoes with the squash and stuff. Hey, actually, this is outside the, what do you call it? The border. That came up from seed from somewhere. That's going to be interesting. So it's growing good, and I think it'll keep going. Here's another pumpkin. Looks more squashy, more like a mixture of squash. What's all in here? There was something in here. Yeah, that looks like an acorn, more of like an acorn squash. And here's a tomato that's looking good with that. And here's a vine doesn't have anything on it yet. I guess it wants the grand pumpkin. It looks very characteristic of a pumpkin plant. The leaves have some of this light and dark green look to them, and it looks certainly like a pumpkin plant. And it's taking its time. This one probably doesn't have anything on it. This isn't a poorly... Yeah, well, there's a little acorn over there. This isn't a poorly lit area because of this building, and it only gets afternoon sun. But once it gets sprawled out, it's going to blow up and grow whatever it is. And here's some volunteer tomatoes. I planted a gob of them in this spot and braced it up really good. And these tomatoes here are getting pretty good sized. Usually when I transplant volunteers, the tomatoes are pretty small relatively, and here they kind of look like that. But those are decent sized. Right here, they may get pretty much like a normal tomato, possibly. And this thing is tall as me, and it'll probably get a couple more feet taller. Might have to add to these posts to hold it up. So that was looking absolutely terrific. And here's another pile of squash. And this is what we call, there's two of them things. This is what we call a pumpkin. It's huge. And we had, those are kind of getting too big. They can be eaten, but I like to cut them when they're, about 6 inches. This is like 8 or 9 inches long. It's getting big. And we cut one, I cut one the other day, and today we had stir fry with it, and it was really good. My wife rather have the pumpkin, the cross of pumpkin and squash, because in the stir fry it doesn't get mushy. Like zucchini gets mushy in a stir fry, but it had these mixes. They make a real good. They're really good in stir fries. And that looks like pretty much a pumpkin. Looks like it's classic pumpkin. And here's my toilet tomato. And it's got a lot on it. That one there is probably going to start turning. It's turning and it might be chili. Put in the chili. This is good sized. So that's pretty impressive for a potted tomato. And here's a potted cantaloupe that's kind of weedy now. And last year I got a pretty good cantaloupe out of a potted one. I think this has got squash, zucchini, watermelons. Watermelons don't mix in with these big leaf plants. They get shaded out real quick, and they usually die off. So in a hill of don't put watermelons with squash, because they'll get run over and they'll get shaded out. And here is, well, this is another combination of zucchini and watermelon. That watermelon, hey, that one's got a little bud on it, and it's got a watermelon, so that one might pop a little. It might get a watermelon that's like the size of the fist if it ever pollinates correctly. And here's my toilet tank, and it's got a little squash that's getting ripe, and it's got 3 plants in it. There's another little pumpkin on the ground there. And here is my pineapples. They haven't gone anywhere. And here's one of these squash here, had a pumpkini on it, and that's the one we put in the stir fry. And it really tasted good, had a good texture. So that was, I guess, a success. And here's something weird that happened. This was a pumpkin that just popped off the vine. The leaves of the plant look kind of sick, and I have no idea what happened to that. It's lacking something, or it's got a disease. I hope it's not a disease. It may, I don't know. It's just a mystery. It could be nutrition, or it put this pumpkin on too early. Usually when they get that size, they'll ripen correctly. And that one's going to go to the chickens. The neighbor's chickens will be happy with that one. And here is, like, right over here is the third planting of sweet corn. It's about in between waist and shoulder high. It is just going crazy. It's growing a foot a week easily. And here's my potted tomato group. I planted them with volunteer tomatoes and used the neighbor's chicken manure and stuff, and I put a little bit of potting soil on the top to make sure it doesn't burn the plants. And those are really on the move. And I'll go down the corn row. This corn here, there's about 3 little spots, 3 little hills that they're a little more yellow and shorter than the rest. And this spot here is like the prime area of the garden for sunlight. And it's funny that the stuff that down there that's got poor sunlight is doing better. So it's kind of a mystery what's going on here. It's probably nutrition, or, the squash could be taking some of the nutrition. It might be sending roots underneath the ground where it's competing with the corn. That could be a possibility of why it's just a bit shorter. They're looking healthy, but we'll see in about 3 weeks if it's a problem. Okay, we've been on that one. And this is some volunteer Mm, probably pumpkin. That one sure has the huge leaves. Looks like there's a lot of zucchini in that thing. It's got the big leaves. Okay. Let's check this one out. Oh, I'm gonna check those. Is there any buds on you? That one's pretty healthy. I shoved it over away from the corn the other day to keep it from shading out, and it stayed. Okay. Here is 3 volunteer tomato gobs. They're definitely healthy looking. And they got lots of little tomatoes. Those, you put those in I would put those in and make a chili. Just throw them in the processor whole. No peeling, nothing. Just throw them in whole and grind them up. And they make a good chili. And I'm gonna have plenty of them here in a few weeks. Here's more of a squash looking, looks like a turban squash without the turban. It's really a flat one. It's an interesting looking one. This one and those along the building here, those just came up on their own. And I just left them because this is poorly lit. And I just left them there. It's a poor spot. If it's a success, it'd be fine. If it fails, that's okay too. Tomatoes everywhere. And I got the asparagus really looks good this year. These were transplanted over here last year, and I'm getting them strong, and I'm going to be cutting asparagus next spring for sure. They're really looking healthy, and these seeds are taking forever. These seed pods or whatever they are, and I'll try to harvest a few of them, and I might plant more along this end of this building since they're doing good there, and I'll definitely have asparagus, a lot when those get good sized. Okay. And crossing over here. Got 16 hundredths of rain this morning. And there maybe a little bit later. I don't think so, but you can really tell that corn's shorter up there on that. And that is so odd. And here, I'm gonna have to figure this out. Am I still live? What'd I do? Yeah, now I'm going again. I reconnected with the cell phone service because the Wi-Fi was cutting out. And here is boy, that's the pipe hole. This here that's our drainage from the gutter. And lots of water comes down through here. So these potatoes right here at the end really certainly get enough water. And one of the obstacles is, I think that third one up there, I hit the pipe with the shovel when I put the potato in, the seed potato, and I put it off to the side, and there's no problem with that. The poor old pipe's getting banged up a lot. Okay, here we go. Oh, that looks good on. Here is my 4th sweet corn. I planted this last Monday, and it's coming up already. So in the summertime in Tennessee, you put sweet corn in the summer when it's hot and humid and wet, and it comes up a lot of times in 3 days. This came up in 4 days. There's another one. And I plant 4 seeds to get 3 plants. And we'll see what we got. We got one up there right there. It's got 2, and that's the first day they've been up. So it looks very promising. Here's the carrots again. And they're getting, I'm gonna probably harvest some of these out and make a stew with them probably within a week or so. And here's that volunteer tomato in the carrot row because there was a gap in the carrots. The tomato came up there, it started growing there, and I said, oh, I'll just let it go. And just, and it's doing great. It's got large tomatoes for a volunteer tomato. Oh, here we go with this. I didn't want to dig these up and put corn, and I left these black nightshade berries in there. Come on. Oh, they're down there. Yeah, and you just can eat them. They sort of showed up last year. I knew what they were. I'm starting to think that birds spread them, and these black nightshades have this distinguishing look to them. They have bug holes in them, and it's like, it looks like a weed, but if it's a weed with bug holes in it, it's probably a nightshade. So you'll get some berries, and I got nightshades all over this year in the garden that just come up, and we'll see what happens. Okay, here's my first corn, planted really early. It was, I don't know if it was probably, it could have been late February even. And it's about ready to pick probably next week. And this hill here, I've never seen this, before. I've grown corn a lot of sweet corn in my life. And this has 4 stalks with 7 ears on it. So, and they look like pretty much full-sized ears. And there's like the next hill has, that's 3, there's 6, at least 6. So this group of corn's gonna really put out this the ears. So I'm really happy. That's impressive. And I mulched it with tree leaves, and then I put some chicken manure at the base later on, and it certainly hasn't hurt it. And then it just looks terrific. Here's a row of Kennebec tomatoes, and I think I measured this one at 42 inches. It's got massive stems, and it's got a big old push-up. Maybe it's got a good 7-8 pounds of taters on it, who knows. But the whole row, I think that's 8 hills, and they all look fabulous. They're just, Kennebecs are gonna be a go-to. That's the first Kennebecs ever grown, and they look amazing. And here is, what is this? Oh, this is a Mr. Stripey. Nana wanted some Mr. Stripeys, and if I can get a good, and they're hiding down there, they're pretty good sized. And this is a Brandywine, and there's a good group on it, but I already picked a good, a very large, decent large tomato on it, and took in the house to ripen. And here, that's another Mr. Stripey. It's got 3, and there's a couple more up here. And here is another Brandywine. It was the last tomato to bear tomatoes. And where is that? Oh, there you are. And there's the biggest one and a couple others. And I see another little one. And here, oh, this is a Big Zack. And they're a huge tomato, but they got good flavor. And they really have a big plant. Big plant, big tomatoes, good tasting. And they put a lot on too, so it's all the good things. And here is a, let's see, okay, Bush Goliath tomato. And there's a ripe one needs to be picking. And well, there's a lot of little Goliaths there growing. And here's a purple Cherokee tomato. Oh, those look pretty. I hope they're, I think there was another year it said purple Cherokee. We got it at the nursery and it didn't turn purple. I think it was more of a pink or something. It was it was mislabeled. And I hope this year we got it. We got a purple Cherokee. Okay. Here's a little batch of onions. That was one that I missed last year harvesting. And it's got some pretty good bulbs on it. So it's going to come back, well, 3 or 4 times of what it was. The one I missed. Okay, here's acorn. This is like real acorn squash. And I just threw in about 15 seeds. I think all germinated. And there's 3 there. There's one that's small. There's one, you can barely see it. And there's a good number of them. We only need about a half dozen, but oh, here. This is a potato that's trying to make it out of the squash that was in compost. I just kitchen waste, and I threw it out here and I put soil on top of it to decompose it. But I might get a potato or 2. I'm surprised it's doing okay. With squash usually just overrun stuff, but that potato is making an effort. And here's some Yukon Gold potatoes, but these look more ripe than the others. They're in a couple weeks. They're going to be dug and let this squash take over this area. And where's a good spot? Okay, that looks good. And these are turkey craw beans, 7 foot in the air. And I see they might need spraying. I see little holes in that leaf. I'm gonna have to watch this. And I think I'm gonna pick them tomorrow. I might get a couple gallons. Oh boy, look at these guys. Oh my. They're just loaded. I've been eating beans every day. And try different things with beans. And here's the giant sunflower. It's probably 10 feet high. And this was a volunteer. I had, right there was the last year's where I grew them. And there was one stalk that just broke in half with ripe seeds, and the seeds scattered all over. And I thought I picked them all up, but there was, there's a 1 or 2 there. There's still a little sunflower with it, and they just started growing. And here's some volunteer tomatoes that I put here. Tomatoes aren't bad in size. This is really shaded. The beans shade it in the morning, and the sunflower shades at midday. It doesn't get a hell of a lot of light, but it looks good. And there's the second plant's got tomatoes on it. And here, some cantaloupe plants. They're looking pretty good. And here I got a leaky styrofoam container that leaks out about a half an inch or so a day, and that plant's gonna be watered 24/7. And here's where I cut I let the cabbage go to seed. These are Jersey Wakefields, and they were Jersey Wakefields, and I got the seed off them. I got them in the house drying. And here's a couple of those little Jersey Wakefields. I cut these plants down in the spring to give some light to the beans, and they're kind of coming back. And I'm not sure if that's going to make a head or not. It looks like it might, but I have my doubts. And that plant is 3 years old. And over here is, what's left of the flathead Dutch last year. This is the seed. Probably next week, I'm going to pull, get the seed off and take in the dry, and I'll have cabbage seed forever. I won't have to go, as long as I plant them around the New Year's, I'll have cabbages all the time. I might try cabbages this fall. I might experiment with the seed. And here's a big bean. Experiment with the seed and see if it's viable. And if it's, as some plants start growing, I'll stick them out here and see how fall cabbage works. And here are more potatoes. These up on the top are red Pontiac. They're showing, when they show these spots on a leaf, they are getting ripe. And they're getting ripe early this year. This is only this is the 9th of June. They probably need to be out of the ground within a week or two. And here are some white onions. They are just looking crazy good. Need a little more weeding again. And you see this big one. That one wasn't, let's see, that wasn't really that big last week. Now it's starting to get a big bulb on it. I hope these grow another 3 weeks. I usually harvest these July 1st, and they look like they're about on time. They're still pretty, this is in a different spot this year, so, and they're looking good. They look a little different this year. They kind of I looked at photos and stuff of, this is chin high, this stem. And they look a little different this year. They have a lot of these bends in the tops. So I don't know, it's probably just a little different variety of white onion. And here's my lettuce. I cut it yesterday. Got a good container full. I had salad this morning. It's getting a little bit bitter, but if you put enough ranch and stuff on it, you don't even notice it. Here's another volunteer tomato. It's to the top of the post, and tomatoes all over on it. Here's another batch of that pumpkins and squash. Where is that one? Well, now that looks like really a full-blooded pumpkin. Whatever the volunteers were, a lot of them look like full-blooded pumpkins. from a pumpkin of a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin from, I think it was like 4 years ago. So I threw that out, and I've been getting uh, jack-o'-lanterns from it for last three years. Uh, Here's a tomato that's coming out of the surviving through the squash leaves. Looks pretty good. Here's some volunteers that I planted a row. Volunteer tomatoes. Are they blooming yet? Yep, there's a blossom on the end, so it's gonna. And this one had a hard time. I think it was a couple things. It was a little more shadier down here, and I think there was a lot of fungus that stunted it down. And I've been spraying a solution on it to try to keep that fungus at bay. The solution is baking soda is the main ingredient, and what is it? Dishwashing liquid, just a little bit of that, and a little bit of vegetable oil. So I think it worked. I think it's working. It's a good luck. And here's another little pumpkin that's coming out the very end of the garden of this patch. And there's that little volunteer potato. And I think I'm going to dig it this week. Looks like it, and it's not going to be much there. There's probably going to be a little handful of little potatoes, but that's better than nothing. Okay. Here's the cabbages. This hill's got two. This one here has got a pointy, like it's a Jersey Wakefield. The Jersey Wakefield's got a pointy top on it. And I forgot what these called. This is just a green cabbage of some sort. And that one looks good, and this one is a little smaller. There's two here. I'm worried about that one. Oh, I'm worried about that one not working because it's soft. It's not firming up, but it may later. Okay, this is part of the stir fry today. We took a half of this cabbage, cut it, and Nana chopped it up, and we had stir fry, and it was a real good batch of stir fry. More cabbages, listen guys, that one's big. That one's gonna be good and something. And here are my tomatoes that I started in January from seed. It's funny, these up the top here are a little shorter, but this one's got, I think I counted 19 tomatoes on this one. But my concern is it's only got a little top here to draw energy from. So these tomatoes likely aren't going to grow much more. 19 is better than none. This one here probably going to start turning. So that's what happened last year with these beefsteaks. They didn't get very tall, but they really put the tomatoes on. We added a lot of light to the garden. The neighbor cut a tree. I had some trees trimmed, and the garden is massively better the last 2 years. Light's important. I never thought light was that important, but it's definitely important in a garden. And all these other tomatoes, these beefsteaks. See, these down here look a lot taller for whatever reason. I mean, there's a couple things. This shorter ones was garden last year, and they might be missing a little bit on nutrition, who knows. And this down here at the end is virgin. This is from sod. This is new garden at the end. That could be the factor. in the size. And that one's really loaded. And oh boy, look at these guys. They're big and many. And then look at the plant. That plant's not going to clear the cage unless when these are taken off, it starts growing again. But it's all the energy's being put in the tomatoes. Here's my second corn. Oh, I stepped on my sunflower. Poor thing. Okay. Let's see. This has got potential of 5 or 6 ears. This is the end here is all new ground. Oh boy, look at these over here. Usually when there's corn inside, the inner rows are a little bit smaller and later. But for some reason on this patch here, there's 3 rows on a lot of it. They look really good in the middle of the patch. So that's kind of unusual. Just ears everywhere. Silks and ears. They're about done pollinating. You can see the tassels. See when this is, that's the flowers, and it's about done flowering. This part here flowers last. The tips are the first thing that flower, and they're about done flowering. And I like to come on here and pollinate them myself. I just put pollen in my hand and put on the silks, especially stuff that's on the edge or late ones that or don't have a good, or the tassels already bloomed out or something else. And I get them all pollinated good. Here's some oh boy. These are giant Marconi peppers. They're just like a green bell pepper, a mild pepper. And this plant here decided I'm going with peppers. And this one too, I'm going to have peppers on me. And this one here, I said I'm going to be tall, but it's starting to really get loaded up with peppers. And this one up here, it's got a couple big ones. I think the reason is there was 2 plants in the nursery carton on these top 2, and these were singles. And I think the singles put on peppers first because they had no competition. Here down here is some volunteer, squash pumpkins. I brought over some chicken manure and put around these around the corn, and that still had pumpkin seed in it. I fed the neighbor's chickens a lot of pumpkins, and some of the seed didn't get eaten. And I brought over the manure, and then they started growing. And once this corn's gone, I'm going to let these pumpkins grow and take up this whole area. Okay, here's a bean, and I try to get it to climb. There's 2 plants. This is volunteer. It came up here, but on this fence here, you can see here the vine from last year. That there was one plant that was like 20 feet wide, and it gave me beans, buckets of beans. A single plant gave me buckets of beans all late summer and fall. And these are probably the descendants of them. And I'm trying to get them on that fence again, but I go over and put them on the fence, and then the end dies. So I don't know what a lot of people like to run them up corn, but I'm going to cut this corn down when it's harvested. So to give everything light. Light's important. I'm going to go back over here. So the beans are going to be interesting. If I ever get them on that fence, it might be Interesting. Okay, here's another row of volunteer tomatoes. This is a really successful one. Tomatoes all over on it. I just put a row in. I put them in, 6 inches apart. They're doing pretty good. Here's another little row of volunteer tomatoes. I had to replant a few of them because the water came down through here and just washed them out of the ground. And this one's blooming. And here is another row of volunteer tomatoes. This was the first group I planted. They were planted extremely thick because there were just gobs of seedlings. I couldn't really separate them, and I put them in. They were too thick. I think a lot of them died out. They're thin themselves, but they're producing. They're putting on some tomatoes. They still look, and they got the fungus too. And I tried to spray them a lot to keep. Now these are recovering. The other day these were pretty barren looking, and they're starting to regrow again. They'll go to town here this week. And there happened to be a pumpkin in the mix. Possibly that I took the tomatoes down here, and they probably had a pumpkin seed, and the pumpkin seed came up later. I can't remember, but it's looking good. And over here by this swing set, this is a poorly lit area, maybe about 4 or 5 hours of light a day, and it's an experiment. I put some pumpkins down here in the tire mulch, and the tire mulch is going to be like a self-weeding, so there won't be a minimum care. They're kind of slow looking, but I think they're going to take off here, especially when it gets 90 this week. And here is some, what are these again? Oh, these are pineapple tomatoes. Nana says they're really sweet. So we got 6 of them. They were the last of the tomatoes put in the garden. They all got tomatoes on them, and tomatoes all over. There's going to be a good number of them. They're kind of stringy and tall. Maybe it's a lighting issue, or maybe that's what they are. They look fine. They're really putting the tomatoes on, and they don't have much of that leaf problem that some of these others do. These are purple sweet potatoes. They're going to crawl all over. These potatoes over here are going to be dug up here in a week or so, or 3. And these sweet potatoes are going to take that area up, and they're crawling all over. And those are going to be they're supposed to grow all the way through the summer. They're a hot weather plant. Like these traditional potatoes, the regular potatoes, once that soil gets like 80 degrees, they just quit. They get dormant. And these are just 8 hills here. They're just 8 hills of potatoes cut in half that were my potatoes from last year. And at least on the upper half, they took over the whole space. And there's probably going to be, heck, if I get 30 pounds out of this row, these 2 rows, I'll be really happy. And I don't know where to put them, but I'll be happy. Watermelon. Hey, I think, where is that? I'm looking around for the first watermelon flower. These are male flowers over here. I'm looking for the female where it has a little watermelon on it. Maybe this one is. Yep. That's a watermelon. Now, I don't know if that bloomed today or it's going to bloom tomorrow. They usually, I don't pollinate watermelons. They just come on. I don't really pay attention to watermelons getting them pollinated. They get watermelons. That's good. That's good. We got one, and there's a volunteer squash. Came up from seeds. And here is some butternut squash. There's 4 plants, and now there's 4 squash. 1, 2, 3. Where is that? 3. And they look like maybe a 4 or 5. It's not uncommon that they will put 2 on a vine right back to back. So those could all be. And there's that acorn squash through the fence. And that's just, this mess here is more this is the first group of the volunteers pumpkins and squash that I brought down here, and I planted in a row, and they were super thick. A lot of them are just little ones yet. They're not going. They probably eventually will dig themselves out and crawl, but there's a good half dozen really good plants crawling out of the nest, and there's no squash on these yet. I don't think there's even there's a female blossom yet. They will produce in time. It's a fairly poorly lit area too. It's the afternoon sun doesn't start until about 2 p.m. It gets a dab of morning sun, about 9 o'clock for half an hour, and then it only gets from 2 to 7:30. So it gets not a lot of sun, but they're going. Squash and pumpkins they seem to do okay in a less than optimum lighting. Now this one's got a tomato on it. These tomatoes were in the squash gobs I brought down here, and they're doing better than they should. They're doing about as good as those all tomatoes. So that's about it for Jim Miller's garden. Pretty humid afternoon. It was supposed to rain today, and it rained this morning. It was supposed to rain this afternoon, and it's probably not going to do so. Then again, it might. So this is for this week. Thanks for watching, and really looking good. The next several weeks are just going to be harvesting and all kinds of stuff in the garden. So Jim Miller's garden. Hey, I may do this every Sunday. It seems like it's a good time to do it. I will stop for the day, and I got other videos. I think this is my 4th live extended garden video, and I've been getting some people watch, so I'll keep doing them. So thanks for watching. See you likely next week.